Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. Unlike the Friday edition, we're dedicating the Tuesday podcast to answering your garden questions. Stay tuned to find out how you can get your garden question into the program. So come on, let's do this. We get a garden question from Kimberly. She's in Roseville, California, which is a suburb of Sacramento. It is in Placer County. And for those of you without a map of California open in front of you, Placer County is kind of an odd county. It's a very wide county. It stretches from the middle of the Sacramento Valley all the way to the Nevada state line, a very east-west shaped county, or west-east shaped county. So it goes from about elevation above sea level of about 50 feet to 8,000 feet or so. So you can imagine being a gardener in Placer County. Well, in Roseville, which is the lower end of western Placer County, they used to grow rice there. To give you an idea of where these new homes are going in that Kimberly is part of. So she says, I love to garden and listen to you and Debbie when I'm out walking my dog. You've come close to answering my question on the podcast, but I need a little more detail. We moved in 4 years ago to this new development. We have built in a beautiful backyard with a 3,500-gallon koi pond and have several raised beds that are for my vegetables. I have 10 fruit trees and quite a few perennial plants. In between all the trees and bushes, we put weed cloth covered with really nice wood chips, hoping to improve the really horrible clay soil. Remember, this is an area that used to grow rice. She says, I am now beginning to understand that the weed cloth is actually keeping me from improving the soil. It's breaking down, but staying on top of the weed cloth. I am also unsure of how to fertilize my trees and bushes because you can't rake it into the soil at the drip line because the weed cloth gets in the way. Do I remove the weed cloth at this point? Is it pointless to fertilize above the weed cloth? It does make pulling weeds easier. Thanks for your show. Kimberly, you're right about the weed cloth. It's tough to get fertilizer, even liquid fertilizer, through weed cloth to plant roots. Debbie, do you like weed cloth?
No, I hate weed cloth.
I know.
No.
No, if you've ever lived with weed cloth, you will start swearing at it.
Yes.
And
it seems to come to the surface. When you start to rip it out, it just breaks off, and then you get shreds of it, and the weeds grow right into it.
Yeah, exactly. Though, if weeds germinate in that mulch layer that's on top of the weed cloth, the roots can grow through the openings in that weed cloth and anchor in the soil below. So when you go to pull out that weed, you're pulling up weed cloth with it, and then you decide, well, I'll just take out all the exposed parts of weed cloth, and you start ripping, and it either rips into shreds or you keep pulling more up out of the ground.
Right.
And you'll eventually say, I should have never put that weed cloth down there to begin with.
Right. So the answer to our questions are yes and yes.
Do you remove the weed cloth, and is it pointless to fertilize?
While the weed cloth is there, yes. So yes, remove the weed cloth, which is not going to be a fun job, but do it. And you're going to waste money by applying fertilizer over the weed cloth. Maybe a tiny bit will get through, but most of it won't. So the better is to remove the weed cloth, then put the mulch on top and let the mulch break down and be your fertilizer. Was
the whole point of the weed cloth, just as the name implies, a barrier for weeds?
I think that was the idea, yes. Yeah. Just like root barriers were supposed to stop tree roots.
But they thought that because it was a permeable fabric, and thank goodness it wasn't just black plastic, it was a permeable weed cloth that allowed air and water to get through. Well, even that can be temporary because those micropores would plug up eventually.
Yes. The fines, meaning the small particles of the mulch that's above it or whatever else is above it, the tree leaves that have fallen onto it will clog up those pores.
However, mulch is a great idea.
Mulch is a wonderful idea.
Yes, especially using those chipped, shredded tree branches and leaves. I have a load sitting in my driveway right now.
Yeah, I have one in my yard, too.
And I love it because it was from a freshly chopped down tree, so there's brown parts and green parts to it.
Yeah, they actually start to compost right there. You can dig into it, and out comes a bunch of steam.
I stuck my compost thermometer in there just to see how high it would get, and it got up to 110.
All right.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And generally, for a compost pile, you want it to be 130 to 140.
Right.
But
that will break down weed seeds and things like that.
110 ain't a bad starting point.
Oh.
So there's that. So mulch, a few inches of mulch, as long as it's not touching the trunks of the plants, you're doing fine. And what's nice, too, is mulch can also keep those weed seeds from sprouting or at least make them easier to pull out because the soil is still moist.
Yes.
Moist soil, that's another benefit.
And over time, the soil will become more friable, meaning more open.
Mm-hmm.
It'll have greater tilth. That's another word that means it's open and easy to turn. And so the weeds will be easier even over time to pull out.
Whenever I think of the word tilth, I always think of the word pornography and the Supreme Court. I forget which Supreme Court justice who said, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it.
Tilth is the same way.
Tilth is the same way. I can't really define it, but I'll know it when I see it because it's just this fine, black, beautiful soil, and there's earthworms there, and it's like you're holding life in your hands.
And it's easy to work. It doesn't take a pickaxe and watering to get the soil to be able to dig into the soil.
And now I have to look up and see which Supreme Court justice that was. Otherwise, I will get complaints. So let's see which no, pornography. If I could spell, it'd be dangerous when I see it. Oh, Justice Stewart. Okay, let's see here. So according to the Wall Street Journal, the Supreme Court justice who made that phrase, I know it when I see it, as far as in reference to pornography, was Justice Potter Stewart in a case back in 1964.
Long time ago.
The Johnson years. Speaking of pornography. Where are you going with that, Fred? Nowhere. Thank you. All right. And we mentioned, too, that we mentioned this a lot. We'll keep mentioning it because we both love mulch. It moderates soil temperatures. It allows moisture to better penetrate the soil. As you like to say, too, Debbie, it breaks up that falling rain.
Yes, prevents soil compaction.
Yeah. To do that, it improves the texture of your clay soil as it breaks down. It increases the bioactivity in the soil below, increasing the amount of the good soil critters, the bacteria and fungi that are good guys.
And there's a lot more of the good guys out there than the bad guys in terms of soil biology.
You just got to give them a chance.
Yes, you got to let them live.
You don't do it with plastic. You do it with the creations of God, trees and shrubs.
Right.
All right. Mulch is good. There you go. Kimberly, thanks for writing in.
So I just planted some carrots and realized that I usually succession plant carrots. However, it's, heating up. I know it's not time anymore. It just seems like there's no time now to plant any more carrots. Do you just stop until fall again? Or is our weather in California just something we can plant in all the time? I know there's schedules of plants to when to plant and all that. I guess my question is, can I just plant some more now, or should I wait?
Well, thank you for using SpeakPipe, first of all, to get your message in to us. SpeakPipe is available to anybody who wants to leave a garden question for us, and you don't need to use your phone. Go to your computer, go to speakpipe.com/gardenbasics, and you can just talk right into your laptop, or if you have a microphone, into that, and it'll leave us the question. So thank you for doing that, whoever you are, wherever you live. As always, please tell us where you're gardening, just a general location. I don't need your street address. You can use whatever name you want. If you want to call yourself Taylor Swift, fine by me. But at least be accurate as far as where you're gardening. Thank you so much. If you are in California, California has a wide variety of climates in which to garden. And you can grow carrots year-round if you live in a milder coastal climate where the daytime high temperatures do not exceed very often 90 degrees, nor in the wintertime does it get much colder than 35 or 40 degrees. In that case, the soil temperature is much more moderate, and yes, you could grow carrots year-round. Here, though, in the Central Valley of California, where the summers do get over 100 degrees, carrots would have a hard time germinating in those sort of temperatures. And if they did germinate and it got hot, chances are what would grow would be rather woody. Carrots do have a wide germination rate as far as temperatures go. Our friend, Master Gardener Gail Pothour, put together a really nice garden note for the Sacramento County Master Gardeners called Soil Temperature Conditions for Vegetable Seed Germination. And the chart lists the optimum soil temperatures at which various crops do best, as well as the minimum and the maximum. Many garden crops are listed on this, including carrots, and it points out that the minimum soil temperature for carrots to germinate 40 degrees. The optimum range is 65 to 85 degrees, and the maximum temperature, 95 degrees. Greater than that, the seeds probably won't germinate. Also in that same garden note, which is garden note number 154, once again entitled Soil Temperature Conditions for Vegetable Seed Germination, Gail quotes a source from University of California, Davis, J.F. Harrington, who wrote some excellent information way back when in 1954. And this gentleman put together a chart that shows the number of days it takes for seeds to germinate at various temperatures, ranging from 32 degrees on up to 104 degrees. Carrots are on the list. If the ground temperature is 32 degrees, guess what? Carrots won't germinate. At 41 degrees, it takes a carrot seed 50 days to germinate, and that number of days drops precipitously as the days get warmer. If the soil temperature is 50 degrees, which it is usually here in March and April, 17 days for carrot seeds to germinate, 10 days at 59 degrees. Ideally, as we pointed out before about the ideal temperature range for carrots to germinate, that's 65 to 85 degrees. And sure enough, in that range at 68 degrees, carrots take less than a week to germinate, 6.9 days. At 77 degrees, carrots take 6.2 days to germinate. 86 degrees, 6.0. But as the temperature goes up, the longer it takes. At 95 degrees, it takes 8.6 days for carrots to germinate. If the soil temperature is over 104 degrees, 0. We talked with Master Gardener Gail Pothour back in episode 263. We were discussing the top 5 homegrown garden vegetables, in which carrots came in at number 5. And Gail explained to us the role temperature plays in the progress of a carrot seed and a carrot plant. Number 5. Oh boy, here we go. It's a crop that I think because it's a root crop, you can grow it just about year round, depending on your climate. Carrots.
Mm-hmm. I have actually never tried growing them in the summer here because I think we're too hot. I think the roots would be too woody. It's generally a fall crop into spring in our area. But yeah, carrots can be easy to grow. Depends on your soil. They do like to have deep, loose soil, no stones or clods in them. If you have real heavy soil, there are varieties that are shorter and can maybe a little sturdier and can tunnel right through that clay. But they typically like to have a real loose soil. And you can get that if you have a raised bed. If you're like we have clay here, I couldn't grow carrots in my ground. Can do it in a raised bed or a large container.
And you're absolutely right. If you have rocky soil too, you want to grow carrots, it might be a good idea to grow the shorter varieties like Danvers half long.
Mm-hmm. And like Danvers and there's a type that's called a Chantenay, and they're real blunt and sturdier. They're thicker at the top, and they can just power their way through heavy soils easier than the ones you find at the grocery store, which typically are the Imperator types. Mm-hmm. They're long and slender, and you really need to have good, loose, deep soil to grow those varieties.
Yep. Raised bed is the perfect solution for growing carrots. And here in USDA Zone 9 in California, you can plant carrots from seed, which is, I don't even know if you can. Have you ever seen carrots at a nursery as a transplant?
I have, actually. I have recently, and I was astonished because I don't know how you would transplant a carrot without getting that root to be disturbed. It could twist or it could bend, and that's what you're harvesting. And so you want good straight roots. So I don't know how you would do that.
Were they in just normal size containers, or were they in like 9-inch tall tree pots?
No, it's a 6-pack.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, my. Well, you can plant carrots from seed. That's a lot safer. And here in USDA Zone 9, you can plant them in March, April, May. And like you mentioned, the fall through winter planting season of August through December of planting carrots from seed. Debbie Flower once gave us a very good tip for planting carrot seeds. Because they're so small, they're very difficult to put them in place 1 inch apart. They tend to, because they're so small, there's a clump of them, and you need to get that thinned out so that they stand, 2 or 3 inches apart, ideally.
Right.
And one of her students came up with it, and they used moist chopsticks. They dipped the chopstick in water and then dipped it in a bowl of carrot seed, and then were very carefully shoving the carrot seeds off the chopstick into place in the garden a couple of inches apart. And that seems to work.
I haven't heard of that. I'll have to give that a try because, carrots, the seeds are so tiny that it's almost impossible to spread them out at their ultimate thinned destination. But wow, okay, I'll have to try that. They do take a long time to germinate, I have found. I mean, it could take several weeks, even 3 or 4 weeks. So you got to keep them pretty moist. And we, at the Horticulture Center, what we typically do is put a piece of Agribon row cover over it. You could use burlap or whatever, and then soak that. And that would keep the soil moist until they start to come up. But they have a long germination period.
Another tip to help thwart that waiting period, or at least let you know that, I've planted there, I better not disturb that soil. Debbie Flower gave us this tip, is to plant radishes nearby the carrot seeds, because radishes germinate so quickly, it will let you know that there are carrots also waiting to come up in that spot. Mm-hmm. So don't go digging around there.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good tip to do. And radishes germinate so quickly, and you'll have them harvested before the carrots are even ready to thin much. So, yeah, that's a good tip.
All right. What's a podcast garden tour without pictures? In 2 recent episodes of the Garden Basics podcast, Debbie Flower and myself took a stroll through a couple of gardens. My backyard garden, which we talked about in episode 341 and came out on Friday, June 7th, and Debbie's fabulous garden, which you can hear about on the Friday, June 14th edition of the podcast. But again, what's a garden tour without pictures? Well, finally, you can get a look at the plants we've been talking about as well in the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. It comes out every Friday, and this is in both the June 7th and June 14th editions. So via the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter, you can listen to what we had to say, as well as scroll down while you're listening to see the plants and the gardening techniques that we were talking about. And I know some of you are saying, why don't you just do a video? Because I have a face made for radio, that's why. Anyway, enjoy the pictures. Find a link to the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter in today's show notes, or go to substack.com/gardenbasics and sign up for free. Garden Basics with Farmer Fred comes out every Tuesday and Friday, and it's brought to you by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Garden Basics, it's available wherever podcasts are handed out. For more information about the podcast, visit our website, gardenbasics.net, and that's where you can find out about the free Garden Basics newsletter, Beyond the Basics. And thank you so much for listening.